Okay, so the goal of this class or this lesson is to think about, this is mainly to my students, and forgive me, I'm on the struggle bus today. That's an excellent email address, for example. Big question. What are the most important ideas from this class? I want to ask you this question. I have my answer to this. I'm going to pull some from what you all say. There's two main big ideas that I want to connect and then show how you can use those ideas to get a good grade on your final essay and your final reflection. But I do want this to be interactive for you to think about and recall. What do you think are the two most important ideas here in the last 14 weeks? And by important, I mean have the most transferability, you can use them, or most helpful. What are they to you? And now people have had enough time to think about it. What do y'all think?
I think one of them definitely was like kind of the career knowledge that we got, just regarding the cover letters, even some personal help with like resumes, and also how to go about talking to employers, talking to other people to maybe get a perspective or like a future connection or network.
Thank you. It's helpful, Hayden. Other ones? What comes to mind? What's the most important ideas from this class?
I think like understanding and like knowing how to use rhetorical strategies to like sell yourself or certain ideas.
Yes. Good. Other ones? Anything else that's coming to mind?
I think just understanding your employer is big.
Yeah, and I think, are we kind of in agreement that the cover letter as an assignment is the most powerful and effective example of the way rhetoric works? I mean, at least we get that. So can you tell me what does a good cover letter do? What's the goal of this?
To show your employer that you have the same values as them.
Yes. And how do you know that?
By doing like your own research.
Yes.
And using those rhetorical strategies to convey that, to sell yourself and like sell the company through what you have and what they are.
When you say rhetorical strategies, are you meaning like ethos of understanding, logos of like logic, and pathos, or like emotion? Or are you meaning more like empathy and imagination, or kind of Bitzer's model of like finding a problem and solving it?
Kind of all of it.
Yeah. Anything else that you think of when you say rhetorical strategies that's not on that list?
I think the Rogerian argument.
Yes. And what about that, Dan?
It's kind of, yeah, like we said about cover letter, showing that you understand the person on the other side.
So that's how I would say, if you ask me what a good cover letter does, it's not just that you understand, investigate, and research them, but that you are generous in that you kind of generously help them make the decision that they need to make. That it's a lot of work to find the right person for your organization. And the better you can help them in that sense, where you're being generous to give them what they're looking for and understand that, is key to kind of, in this sense, communication skills really become perspective skills. And in this case, those kind of perspective skills and research skills become really kind of networking skills. And this is really all, at least to me, kind of connects with what we mean by career readiness, insofar as so much of the new economy is, and not just the new economy, maybe old economies as well, is who you know and how you know it. And that this seems like one example of how these things go together to me. And that, so under this big umbrella, when we're thinking about communication, we're thinking about how cover letters and understanding rhetorical strategies, understanding employer and others are basically, I think, in that big phrase up at the top. And this is actually all, I would kind of put this all under the heading of rhetorical awareness, really. So being able to understand what it means to communicate well. And I'm glad that we got this from our conversation, because this is, for me, really, and the state of Colorado, kind of, and the composition program, really one of the #1 big things that we want to understand. That the cover letter is a really good way to understand that if you're going to communicate, or if you're going to communicate effectively, really, you know, I like the ideas as simple as possible, that audience is everything. If you're not doing it for them, you're not doing a good job. They will know that, and they will see that, especially if they're in positions of, you know, or they've seen a lot of people go through the doors, or a lot of applicants. The other big thing that you could think about, that I've had other students, and I mentioned this earlier, the idea of common ground, of being together with somebody on something, takes an understanding of their perspective, and it takes your ability to communicate to their perspective. But once you find that, you do have to kind of show that you're interested, or that it's not just that audience is everything, but that you're finding common ground with who they are and what they care about. I want to combine all of that with the other main thing that I hope that we can think about, and this is more connected to your paper and the other goal of the course, which is really the writing process. And this is a little bit of a misnomer, because we're talking about writing processes that go along with writing, which is really thinking skills. We could talk about this as being critical and creative. And we could also think, what I've been more fascinated with is learning and questioning, which requires some amount of authentic engagement and curiosity. I found that curiosity is something that you just can't force, and that students' work gets immensely better as soon as they're curious. And sadly, our educational system beats this out of us by the time we're probably 8 years old, but it's beside the point. I do think we can reclaim it by finding a way to try to communicate with the people that are going to help us in our career in ways that show that we care about them and that we know how to serve them and help them. It's kind of the big idea, right? That you can do in so many different ways. The connection that I really wanted to make, and maybe I should pose this as a question, can we see how rhetorical awareness is intersected with the writing process? And there's a lot of different answers to this. But I wonder, instead of me just spelling that out, does it seem like kind of obvious? Are you seeing connections between these two big things? That building our rhetorical awareness is kind of like building our writing processes, or how they intersect? So if we go deeper into writing processes, I don't know if you remember at the beginning of the semester that we said that some writers say that 60% of the writing process, and by the way, this is not just true with writing, this would be the same thing as all kinds of projects, is in the pre-phase. So more than half is figuring out what you're going to do before you do it. And that this actually means, I mean, I really like the word collecting for this phase. Like you're collecting, note-taking. You're also brainstorming. You're sketching. You're questioning. You're researching. You're, if we want to get more like, more applicable to like more existential and life design things, we're prototyping, having prototype experiences or prototype conversations that can help us figure out where we're going. We're trying different stuff and failing at different stuff to try to get us closer. Ideally, when we're doing this stage, we are connecting to, always reminding ourselves of, audience. So should I take this note on this thing? I don't know. Depends. Should I go this way? I don't know. Depends. What way should I mean, you see what I'm saying, right? So this is sense that this says questioning. Maybe I should put questing as well. So you're on like, or like hunting, to use that metaphor, that you're going out there and you're trying to, hunting is actually, I'm loving this. You're going into the wilderness where you're not familiar and you are spending enough time there to figure out tracks and conditions, and you're taking it all in, and you're looking for a way that you can respectfully engage with this creature. In this case, you're about to kill, hopefully ethically and with the cooperation of your local land management organization. That is, you get what I'm saying. Ethics. Shoot, let's put that in there too. Why not? Okay, this is a lot to think about. And this is why hopefully that we can see that this kind of initial stage of the writing process, that this is also supposed to be messy. And that's one clear way that I hope as you go through, we kind of get a sense of drafting and outlining. I wanted to remind you that this is different for different people. I kind of do both of these at once. The other key part, the next biggest one that some people say is, depending on the type of project, is the next real biggest one is revising, which literally means re-seeing. Spelled with 2 E's, by the way. That's how I'm doing. Re-seeing and reconsidering your audience. Now that I have this pretty much done, and I've done all this work, I'm going to rethink about my audience and do it all again. Again, I don't think the college essay prepares us for this, because when we write a freaking essay and it's done, we're done. When you write a cover letter and you're done with the cover letter, your work has kind of, you're maybe halfway there. And now we need to spend more time re-seeing it, reconsidering, how can I make, like, you know, re-specify, refocus, all of those things based on the audience. Specify, redevelop, rewrite. This is the sense that all good writing is rewriting. And ideally, like, if I could wave a magic wand, all of my students would really have a clear and healthy understanding of how rhetorical awareness is a long drawn out process of collecting. I should put listening under here for goodness sakes. Understanding, trying to read, process. And then this connects to the third bit of this that I didn't really know how to fit together, but it's just too important not to put on here. I would argue that information is becoming more and more important as more and more of it in the world that we live in. Like, it almost might actually be like a life and death situation of how we process information. Would you guys agree?
Yeah.
I would also argue that there is so much information out there that it's almost a full-time job to sift through all the bullshit.
Definitely.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I'd also argue that there is a lot of different ways to communicate information. some of my colleagues are having their students turn in their final reflection as memes instead of a paper. So I think I'm going to give you that option. I need to update the assignment to say, write a reflection or a meme plus a smaller reflection. Since you must write a reflection. Because I didn't say that in here, and this is kind of tying this all together. I'm almost done. Ideally, you do this process and then you reflect back on what worked and what did not work and why. If we're thinking about information as what we process, like what we our inputs and our outputs, we have kind of a way, an ethical duty, you might say, to use our communication skills to provide information to people that, that it matters to. Me starting this meeting by telling you about the email I got last night, asking me about my teaching preferences for the fall, was me thinking, what's the one bit of information that my audience, you all, might find valuable? Here's the other interesting, complicating factor of this. In the real world, you often don't get feedback. So I am communicating to you all right now. And I can ask you, is all of this, does this help? Or am I just talking to myself? Because I actually don't know my audience enough to know whether or not this is helpful. And frankly, it's causing me to go in a mini existential crisis as a teacher because I have no feedback.
Yeah,
then,
that's helpful.
Great. And do we see that parallel in the job search? You put out some things and you're like, and they're like, oh.
Yeah, it's always good to have kind of like a refresher. And I mean, like during this past 2 months, there's definitely a lot of stuff that I've forgotten.
Yes, obviously. And I think, what I like about this framework is it's so pliable. It can go into so many different things. You can use this process to draft any kind of a life plan or a business plan. Works really well with business plans. You want a prenuptial agreement, go for it. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Okay. Here's the next thing, and this is the last thing. I really like the idea that not just information literacy, but there's a real value in kindness and generosity. I feel like there's actually gift-based economy is something that is being bandied around, trade economy. We didn't really get to talk about this very much. Do we know what social capital is? Do we know what capital is? Like how much capital, like if my business is capitalized, what does that mean?
It's doing well.
Yeah, and capital meaning money, right?
Yeah, revenues and stuff.
Exactly. Social capital could be like the resources, the value of your network. So in this sense, actually, your social...
Like intangible wealth.
It is wealth that adds to itself.
Yeah.
So if I have better social capital, I'm going to have more opportunities because I have more people that are going to be in positions to give me jobs.
So it is still tangible then, in a sense.
Yes, it is. Because here's, like, I need to move this weekend. I don't have anyone to help me. Low social capital. I need to pay someone now to come and help me move. It's going to cost me $300. Those kinds of things in the music business is huge. If I just reach out someone out of the blue and be like, will you help me? They'll be like, that's $1,000. If I ask my friend to do it, he'll be like, that's $200. It should be $1,000, but for you, it'll be $200.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Interestingly, this is not just what you have and you get from other people. It's about what you provide other people. So your worth in your network, your willingness to go and help your friends move, to use that metaphor, is related to your, like, what you add to the network is what that's what you're trying to do, if we really take this to its limit, when we think about the audience is everything, and that we're writing and revising to better serve them, what social value of your network and the value you provide, your networks. It's probably going to be plural. If you're like me, you'll have multiple careers. So now we're at our final thing. I just hope that we really see that you're in a position actually to be really creative and critical with how you build the things that you want to learn about authentically, and that a lot of that is who you're able to connect with. The idea of reaching out to someone and being like, hey, could I follow you around for a day or something? Like, or could I just talk to you for 20 minutes? Because I have some questions about what it's like to be in your position. And I hope like I can give you a perspective of what it's like to be a student if you're curious about that now. I don't know what I can value. I don't know what value I can give you, except that I think you're awesome. This is kind of part of the game. And I want to be, where did my pen go? How many of you like to get letters in the mail?
Depends on the letter.
Yeah. How about handwritten letters from people that you know?
I don't think I've ever gotten a handwritten letter except for my grandma.
Yay, Grandma. I don't think we do this. Would you agree that letter writing is a dying art?
Yes.
Okay. The idea that I had, how I like to end these classes, and I'm going to kind of let you do this, is think about the various aspects of communication and how audience is everything and what audience cares about. What audience cares about. Oh, what does the audience? It seems like it could be very abstract, and I wanted to make it like, if you are actually writing a letter to someone, ideally, like, well, what's the advantage of getting a physical letter from somebody? Like from your, if somebody writes you a letter, what does that feel like?
That there's actually been like genuine time put into it. Like effort.
And also, did they care about you, that you're special?
Yeah.
Ooh, I'm gonna go watch some Disney right after this. I hope that this course makes you or encourages you to think critically and creatively about ways that you can reach out to your network and get inspired by that. What's my summer goal, you asked, Hayden? Or what am I going to do this summer?
Yeah.
I am going to sit down with this notepad and this pen, because I like notepads and pens, and I'm going to write a letter to Rick Rubin, who is the best record producer I know of, because he's a freaking guru. I'm going to tell him why I think he's the best, and I'm just going to like write him a nice letter. I'm going to link my website to it on the off chance that he's looking for somebody to produce, so I can go record in Shangri-La Studios in Northern California, because that would probably be the coolest thing I've ever done in my life. And I'm going to, it's a long shot, but me writing that letter out to him might actually do something.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to really kind of emphasize ways to be creative in an analog way. So much of this is digital, but when I get something that's analog, besides putting it into quarantine for 3 days, I still really value it, right? And so I had this idea about 6 years ago, and someone shared this website with me. It's called futureme.org. Write a letter to the future. Margaret says, I love this. I've sent myself 5 letters so far, and every year it's a great surprise. Because I forget so easily. It turns into such a deep and reflective process. I usually weep and laugh when I write. Oh, thanks, Margaret. Okay. I like this, and I like that you can choose between 1 year and 3 years. And I like that you can not only put your email, but you can like write someone else an email in the future. And
Wow.
then you can't really see, oh yeah, yeah, or you can choose a specific date. I want to do something similar, but in an analog format, and have you choose, if you so, your mission, if you choose to accept it, is to write a future letter to yourself. And this is the final writing assignment for the class. Not graded, completely optional, just if you want to flex this part of your brain. And I love this as an exercise because it makes us think about a couple of key lessons from the class. The first being this. Actually, does anybody want to do this? Is anybody like gonna do this? All right, that's enough.
I might.
How long in the future are you gonna write? 1 year, 3 year, or 5 year? 5.
Maybe all 3.
There we go. Okay, let's go 5 years. Are there things you know about your audience and things you don't know about your audience? If your audience is 5 years in the future, me.
Yes or no?
Yeah. What do you know about your audience? You don't need to answer that question.
Okay. I'll answer like blanket. You know, like yourself from the last 20 years. So that's
Yeah.
a lot of evidence for 5 years, but also you're aware that that's another 5 years that things could completely change or alter, build upon what you've known to be.
Do you generally know about what kind of things you like and what kinds of things you're not going to like?
Yeah.
Yeah, and you know what kinds. So I know for me, like I love hearing nice things about myself. So when I do this exercise, I just tell myself a bunch of nice compliments because I'm like an egotist. And I like to hear myself talk. So my letters, I just opened a letter I wrote to myself 4 years ago, about a month ago, because I've done this with my students every year for like the past 7 years. And it was so nice. It was so nice to read. And I remember I designed it that way because I knew I would like to read those things about myself. Encouraging bits. Like, hey, you're still blah, blah, blah. So I like that one. I like the fact that this is an exercise that makes you think about your audience as you write it and think about what you would like to receive. I also like it because it makes us consider the long-term growth and development of our education and that we don't really know where the fuck we're going in a lot of ways. And so that's what I'd like to do, is give us an opportunity to write a letter to ourselves.
Can I make a comment?
Please.
So I've written one of these before as well. I've written a few of these. And the most interesting thing to me about these is that, or the most interesting like parts of the ones that I've written in the past was really detailed specific things that either happened like in the week prior or like that day. And this kind of ties in as well with like thinking and memory, because a lot of times when we like think of things or we remember something, we remember like us viewing it, but we don't remember exactly what we were doing.
Yes.
So when you write the letter, say like exactly what you were doing. Like you were sitting there with a cup of something. Because when you read the letter in 4 years, you're going to go, oh my gosh, I literally remember sitting there. Like I can almost smell like the room sitting there. Yeah, it's going to be, I don't know. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do like 6 years, honestly. I might do like more than that. I might do it for like when I'm 30 and just see where you're at, big dog. How you doing?
Yeah. My favorite story from the years of doing this, when I tell students to write something they would like, some student, they're kind of used, when the class leaves, some people just rush you out the door and some students mosey around, and student moseys up to me and gives me his letter and he's like, so just so you know, I put $20 in there. I was like, that's awesome. He's like, no, I mean, you're a teacher. I know things get tough. If you you know, you have my permission that, because I used to mail them out for students. I stopped doing that because I just realized you could just keep them in your binder, and the post office is maybe not going to be around in 5 years. No, that's a horrible, not really a joke. Anyway, that's awesome, Cole. Start where you are. I really actually think you're right to say like where you're physically, where like I'm in this room, in this house with these roommates at this,
Exactly.
you know what I mean? Like that
Like, what
is
did you have for breakfast this morning?
Yes, love it. And that this really, you know, the more specific your writing is, usually the better that it is. Where are you emotionally? Like, how are you feeling about things? Where are you in, you could also think professionally. Like, are you making any kind of connections? Are you thinking about making connections for the first time? Did you have an internship that's no longer going on? Maybe even also romantically. What do you know, like, who is driving you crazy, or who do you wish was driving you crazy? Okay, then you could also say, the other thing that I've enjoyed doing this, and I'm glad you started us on this, is where do you think you'll be? That's always interesting to read. You might also say, like, what do you hope you'll remember? This is a good prompt, especially considering as you get older and the demands, the professional demands get greater and greater, it's easy to forget things that you don't want to forget. And so you could also think not just what, this could be a who question too. Keeping in touch with people that you want to keep in touch with. Who might that be? Who do you think you should reach out to when you're 30, for example? Any other like nice things you can say or something like that? I don't know. Nice words. There we go. Now we're really, I think I may be done. So yeah, also date the letter. I didn't do this. If you have an envelope, put it in there and seal it with the date. Seal it with the date you want to read it, or you could just have an open-ended date and just seal, but at least write the when you wrote it. This is May of 2020. 40 days into shelter in place. Does that make, do we see how this exercise as just writing a letter to yourself is one way to think that your communication skills are really connected to your creative and critical thinking skills and your ability to brainstorm? You should put imagining in here. This is a skill that our education system totally denigrates unless you're in the arts. That's what I had for you. I was going to encourage you to just take some time to do that. If not right now, then later.
Definitely.
You guys have been a very good class. I've been very, it was sad for me to lose the class when we did, because I like to teach the courses that kind of build up to the, you know, as we go through. I think the ability to talk with other students and hear feedback from other students and compare notes with other students is where a lot of the interesting magic happens and rhetorical awareness happens. Hearing other people. This word conversation keeps on coming up for me. So that's what I had for you. Is I would encourage you to write a letter for yourself. I also can say for those of you that were waiting to see how this connects to your essay and your grade in the course, bless your patient minds and hearts. If you can show me in your self-reflection that you considered your situation throughout this process, even if the essay itself isn't the best or the project itself isn't the best, but you're thoughtfully telling me, hey, I actually tried to do all this stuff and this is what I did. And for that, I am actually proud. I actually learned what this course was trying to teach me. You will get a better grade on your essay and you will get a better grade on your final course reflection. The final course reflection is on metacognition. It's on your thinking about your thinking. And sometimes thinking about thinking can be a waste of time. But I'm hoping that you think about your own development in your work as a whole, as a student, in a way that's going to help you move forward. And my personal wish for all of you all is to continue to get better at learning and questioning. That's what I want to do. And I feel like that has more to do with other people than I've ever really understood. So that's kind of my parting wish for y'all.
Cool. Cool.
Appreciate it.
I appreciate you all. And I'm going to stop the recording and then see if there's any other particular questions that you all have about your things. But I have about 5 more minutes.
Cool.
I've got an obligation at 1, so I got to run.
Thanks, Hayden.
But, yeah, thanks so much. Great course. Had a good time. Learned a lot.
Thank you.
Yeah. Adios.
May the force be with you.
You as well.